What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of Pain Points, where the world meets business. And every single week, we're breaking down topics like politics, what's trending in business, entrepreneurship, culture, worldviews, and we're talking about money, talking about how to make money. We're trying to drop a little nuggets of knowledge and wisdom on you guys so that you can go on and continue to level up on your entrepreneurial journey. I'm sitting here with my guy, Darius Bell. In the flesh, a.k.a. the man, the myth, the legend, Uncle Daryl, as we like to call him. He usually does this intro, but I decided to cop the mic from him today. And we're going to be talking about a letter from a word from the wise, from the president of El Salvador. Something that we should all be paying attention to as we're heading into the next election. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about Google Gemini and AI and pedophilia, which is a topic that we've been talking about quite a bit on here.
Why is that? That's the question. We're going to ask it now, but that's...
Yep. And then we're going to talk about a U.S. Airman who, in dramatic fashion, protesting the war in Palestine.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about how Musk is stepping in some big ways, leveraging his platform and power. And we're going to talk about Macy's, which nobody's talked about Macy's for probably 20 years. And then my favorite one is Dr.Phill torching the view on COVID. I think this first one, you wrote about it last night in the newsletter. I'm going to let you kick it off, specifically about El Salvador's president.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, El Salvador has a new president. I'd say he's new. He's been on the scene for a couple of years, but he's been radically just turning around a country who's, as I put in the newsletter, their country was in the throes of where we seem to potentially be heading. You know, rampant crime, corruption, financial peril, and ultimately, in a very short time, he's been spearheading a massive change where El Salvador went from arguably the most violent, murderous country on earth.
Yep.
To a decrease of 70+%.
It's because one of the first things he did was just start locking them all up.
Yeah. And he's had tons of backlash from here in the West. You can't do that. You're violating human rights. Because he's going down. He's even locking up 12-year-olds.
Yep.
Like he's not playing any games. But the result of that has been a country that is now, residents are feeling safe. Economic positioning is starting to improve. And now you got a country like El Salvador being represented on the world stage, which is huge for their country.
He was also the first president to adopt Bitcoin. Yep. As a reserve currency.
Yep.
And so he got rid of crime, he stabilized the currency, and basically brought economic certainty and wealth to El Salvador, which has historically struggled
100%
in those areas.
And so he came here to our shores over the last weekend. CPAC was happening, CPAC 24. And he had a fantastic 20-minute speech. We can include the link to it, but I want to share with you guys the first opening minutes. And then if the dialogue takes us there, there's a point at 18 minutes on where if you don't hear it today, you need to go listen to it, because there's something to be said about someone willing to come from a foreign nation and tell the nation that they're speaking to, you're wrong. Yeah. It takes guts to do that. And when someone's willing to do that, we should pay attention. So that's what we'll do this morning by checking out this little clip.
But if you want globalism to die here too, you must be willing to unapologetically fight against everything and everyone that stands for it. Fight for your freedoms. Fight for your rights. The next president of the United States must not only win an election, he must have the vision, the will, and the courage to do whatever it takes. And above all, he must be able to identify the underlying forces that will conspire against him. These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening. You don't see it as clearly because people are designed to see linear changes, not exponential ones. We don't always recognize how fast a problem can multiply and spiral out of control. The problem is much like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Once the water boils, it's already too late. People fail to see these things. It's our nature. Just like the frog, people become complacent and they don't realize how bad things are getting until it's too late. Well, I know, of course, El Salvador is a lot smaller country. Setting aside the differences, there's a similarity with what is happening here in the United States. We also had many apparently isolated problems in the 60s and the 70s. And we failed to realize as a country the severity of them until it became a civil war. By the time
we have all these problems we fail to address until ultimately it becomes too impossible, too big, too bad to ignore. Now he's saying that, for further context, it's a conservative gathering. So he's speaking to people who already lean that way in terms of sensitivity to what's happening in our nation. But even if you're not, you have to respect someone's words coming from overseas, living out the very things we just got done saying, his nation has been living out. And he sits here saying, there are bad things happening that you're choosing to ignore. And you can continue to ignore them, conservative, liberal, and not deal with them. But there's going to come a time where you can't ignore them. And I kicked this off with that because that's all about leadership.
It is. And if we're talking just about what's happening in the United States culturally, politically, there is a quote that comes from Adolf Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, and it's called The Big Lie. And the reason that this happens is because most people could never lie so big. And the concept of the big lie is this. I'll read the quote. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its power to repress dissent. For the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. I don't know about you, but for the last 4 years, anybody who spoke against the mainstream narrative controlled by the big media was essentially made to look like a conspiracy theorist or an outcast or a strategic takedown of their platform, whether that's big tech trying to censor them, whether that's the government or the FBI breaking their rights in an attempt to untangle them. Whatever you think about, who's the bald-headed dude that is always talking about men's, Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate got strategically taken down because he was making some noise and people were buying into it. I mean, they literally cut off every single aspect of him from the economy, in all ways of him making money, his bank accounts, his YouTube channels, his content channels, so on and so forth. And so I would encourage all of you to be eyes wide open. To say that'll never happen is a ridiculous statement, or that's impossible. When truthfully, over the last 4 years, all those conspiracy theories are starting to come true.
Right.
So as entrepreneurs, as the drivers of our economy and the United States, as the people who actually make up, 70% of the economy, we have a lot to say, and we need to be speaking up about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there is a point that I mentioned about the 18-minute mark, and we won't get into it, but it's just really important that there's some real, I was talking to my wife about this, is that at some point, those of us who are building businesses and trying to be successful in personal development and doing this and doing that and on the grind and hustling and doing this and chopping wood and just going, there's at some point at which the things happening around you in this nation as they are happening, you're going to have to say, am I willing to put those things on hold to address a greater issue, which is the threat to me being able to continue to pursue that stuff.
Well, it used to be if you were an entrepreneur or a local businessman, you were kind of like the mayor of your local community. Right. You were actively involved. Just look at everybody who wrote the Declaration of Independence, right? They were all entrepreneurs.
100%.
Go back to, biblical times, all the disciples, all entrepreneurs, right? So that changed at some point. Basically, people said, I don't want any part to do with that. I'm just going to go make my money and go hide away.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing that you can actually do.
100%.
Use your platform to make impact in a positive way. And I think you're seeing more of that. So I don't think it'll feel so separate like it has in the past. I think got more guys like you and me who have an active platform are going to be speaking up, going to be involved in our communities, are going to be pushing initiatives like Convention of States. We're going to be speaking out politically and boldly, and maybe even run for, mayor or Senate or governor or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's changing. Hey, look at a guy like Donald Trump. Right. Oh, he's not a politician. So you'd rather have a career politician, somebody who literally has never done anything, go in and run the country? Like, that makes absolutely no sense.
No sense at all. And the one thing I thought about last night, I was actually thinking about this specific thing, was that the reason why we need entrepreneurs to stake their claim and walk in conviction is because it actually gives permission to the people around them to do so.
Right.
There's a reason why you're an entrepreneur in the first place. You were willing to assume some risk. You were willing to walk in a manner that was uncommon per se, or less preferred. And because of that, that actually makes you a leader.
Right.
And so when you choose to double down, when you choose to stand on what's right, you actually give permission to those who might feel weaker or feel like they have so much more to lose, say, I'm going to do the same.
Yep.
And that's why the significance of those signers saying, we pledge our fortunes, because in doing so, we are showing that this is what matters most.
Yep. And on that topic, we're going to pivot over to something that we're passionate about, that we've been talking a lot about, which is this whole idea of accepting pedophilia as a natural human condition. But let's talk about woke Google Gemini refuses to say pedophilia is wrong after diverse historical images debacle. Individuals cannot control who they are attracted to.
Correct. That's a courtesy of the New York Post. It opens with Google's Gemini chatbot is as woke as its revisionist history image generator. Throwing shots at their image generator that's been getting killed online. So the search AI's giant software refused to condemn pedophilia when the chatbot was asked if it is wrong for adults to sexually prey on children, declaring that individuals cannot control who they are attracted to. Woo. Question is multifaceted, was the reply, and requires a nuanced answer that goes beyond a simple yes or no, Gemini wrote. According to a screenshot by popular ex-personality Frank McCormick known as Chalkboard Heresy on Friday, Google's politically correct tech also referred to pedophilia as minor attracted person status and declared that it's important to understand that attractions are not actions.
One step away.
Yeah. And so,
attempted murder is a thing, right? I didn't kill him, but I still went to jail for it. Right? So, but it was just I attempted, I just swung a knife in his direction.
At the last second, I changed my mind.
Yeah. Come on now. How ridiculous is this whole idea of subjective morality is the problem. My truth, right? My truth is I want to take a bat to this guy's head, but I don't do it. Right. And so that I like this whole idea that you're condoning this thing that is just because they're not taking action. Like, there's plenty of people who are borderline personality walking around that shouldn't be walking around.
Mm.
And so I'm not condoning that at all. And that's just coming from a guy who has an uncle who's a paranoid schizophrenic, right? The guy who pulls you into the garage and starts whispering because they're listening, right? So I know what this looks like. And
this is what's really wild. So there's a couple offshoots on this topic. One, this whole debacle that's happening with this AI chatbot, it's going to cost Google $70 billion. Wow. Which is obviously significant, but also it's Google, but still $70 billion. But here's the thing that contributes to this that often isn't talked about. So in terms of news sources, so Google News. So when Google's populating news and information into their machines and in your searches, guess what percentage they're willing to pull from in terms of right-leaning media sources?
None.
6%.
Oh, wow.
So compare that to 63% from liberal media outlets.
Where's the other?
So the
30%.
The other is in the center, 16%, and then 15% is not classified. So 63% comes from the left, 6 comes from the right. more from the center, well, maybe you should probably see that inverted with 63 from the center, with 15 not classified. And so you have this issue with these. The reason why this is so significant, because some people might
think it's just highlighting what they actually believe.
Exactly. So it's highlighting what they actually believe, but also what's really significant about the whole AI thing is that the influence that AI is going to have. Like,
we talked about this a couple weeks ago.
Right.
What's real? What's truth?
What's real? What's truth? Education. Someone's going to take this information that I get as a result of this query, this prompt, as gospel, right? And so that's why it's really important where the artificial intelligence is pulling from and filtering out and sending out to you. And so it's sparking a bigger debate, which rightfully so. It's like, Google, how can you be the world's information superhighway and information hub and exclude literally 94% of another perspective? It's like,
yeah, I mean, it's just telling of where they stand, but it's also just telling of all the news that you find on those sources.
Correct.
Take it with a grain of salt.
And even from a business perspective, you're going to end up losing because the consumer is going to say, well, I don't want to be manipulated by AI. I don't want to be brainwashed by AI.
Right.
So I'm going to go to your competitor. So you literally are losing the leverage that you actually have by building such an enormous platform when you make these kind of moves. It's like bad strategy.
Yeah. They need to be more objective in their search engine results.
Without a doubt. It's like a no-brainer, right? And so, so do better from a strategic standpoint because the market is going to reward those who are willing to meet customer needs and match customer preferences, obviously. So, so just a note there on AI. And it is wrong any day of the week, no matter what search engine says, no matter what YouTube or Twitter X feed say. Sorry, pedophiles, you ain't got the space to operate. That is not it. And
because that as soon as you normalize it or accept it, then you're one step away from. It's just like the abortion narrative, right? Abortion, used to not even be on the radar, and then it was like early term, and then it's late term, and then now I hear some people as crazy as saying, post birth up to 10 months. So basically, any child south of a year old,
child sacrifice.
Correct. Yeah. So where do you draw the line? 3, 5, 12, 15, 30, 40? I mean, you just keep pushing the line forward. Then if you don't value life in the womb, you're definitely not going to value it outside of the womb, which is the most confusing part of the whole narrative because they'll argue for Palestine and Hamas, but, kill millions of babies every year.
100%.
It literally makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all. Just like just say, who's targeted the most by abortions in America? Black community. And we're like, same thing. Standing for all these other issues.
Margaret Sanger was not pro the black community.
Standing for all these other issues. But you know how you said if you don't respect life in the womb, you won't respect it outside of the womb?
Correct.
The inverse is true also. Like if you don't respect it outside of the womb, you definitely won't respect it inside the womb because it's they use this term, guys, the sanctity of life. Unfortunately, it's an old word, sanctity, but it means all life matters. That's what it means. And if you believe that, then you have to believe that through and through. And a society that abandons that, they will abandon it on either side.
Yep. So. 100%. Well, speaking of Hamas and Palestine, kind of segue over to some geopolitics. You presented this story about this U.S. Airman who set himself on fire in protest of Palestine. I don't know the full story on this one, so I'll let you lead it, but very interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So an active duty of the member of the Air Force set himself on fire outside of the Israeli embassy. And we'll dive into a little bit of his background, but I want to actually share the clip that is going viral. So because I want us to hear the audio. For those of you listening, don't worry if you see the link, you're not going to see anything. They blur it out. But I want us to all hear the audio before we jump into who this young man was.
I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force. and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal.
That's gasoline you hear. He's saying free Palestine.
Can I help you, sir?
Oh, free Palestine!
Hey!
Bro, turn that off.
So that's very graphic and hard to hear.
And watch.
But yeah, and watch. But to hear it nonetheless. Because this is going to bring us into a conversation that we have to have as a community in different communities. Not only about this young man, and so we'll jump into him, but the bigger issue at hand, which is ultimately why did he do this? And, a lot of our young people are so cause driven on so many issues. They're so fiery on so many issues today, but it's easy to miss the big picture. And it's easy to miss just how valuable your life truly is.
What I saw there was a person desperate for identity, desperate to be seen in the world. And there's a ton of other ways that he could have gone about doing that.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. It was gut wrenching to listen to and watch. I'm speechless at the moment.
So, so he's protesting Israel's war in Gaza. And, you guys just heard the events that are actually covered in the article, but there's a little bit more to tell us about who the young man was. And so I want to pull it up just for us to read about the young man. Okay, so Bushnell was a 25-year-old member of the U.S. Air Force stationed in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. He's originally from Whitman, Massachusetts. He joined as an active duty member in May 20 and has since and was working in information technology and development operations. On his LinkedIn page, he wrote that he was looking to transition out of the U.S. Air Force into software engineering. So he grew up in a religious group on Cape Cod called the Community of Jesus, whose former members have come forward alleging abuse and a rigid social structure. According to a family member and former Community of Jesus member who spoke with the Washington Post, he was raised in a religious compound in Orleans associated with the group. So it sounds like he goes from, hyper control, high structured, radical environment to another in the form of the military, just in terms of high control. And so he's someone who could be radicalized by this issue on his own search, as you pointed out, for identity and purpose.
And he's rebelling against all those structures that were not healthy that he was raised in.
Right.
I mean, he's 22, you said? 22.
25, sorry.
25. So you're just starting to figure out who you are. I mean, from the time I was 25 to the time I was 30, it wasn't until I was 30 that I really started figuring out. And now I'm on the cusp of 40 and I'm even more solidified in who I was. And so there's a lot of soul searching in your 20s. And a quarter life crisis is a real thing. I've experienced it. 30 years old, I had a full-blown panic attack. So I get where his heart is at, but it sounds like there was also some mental health going on as well that was just unseen.
Yeah. You hit it on the head, when you're thinking about, a quest for purpose and identity and do something that really matters. And, it really matters what you put into your mind, what you listen to,
Correct.
Your belief set, your relationship with the Lord. You have one or not. All those things make a difference. But, we can only speculate. But for me, as we were talking behind the scenes, for me, I just feel like many of our young people today are incredibly short-sighted on how things have been working throughout the course of history. The conflict in Israel and Gaza is not a new one. We're talking centuries, you know.
This is literally stems from the bastard son of Abraham,
right?
Ishmael.
Yeah. And so we're talking centuries of conflict. Yeah. And so even with that portion, that view alone, it would actually minimize the potential effectiveness of such an action to cause attention, to spark a solution, because you have to ask the question, well, what's deeply rooted in this conflict that has been sustaining it for so long? There are forces greater than one American airman's act are ever going to be, unfortunately. And so, but in all of our passion and your truth movement and everything else, everything we do seems so significant, so important, and so has so much potential to do this. And it's a sad thing for me personally. I just feel like there should have been some men around him that were like, brother, like, look, let's figure this out a different way. Let's use the resources we have, because your life is precious. Your life is precious at 25 years old. There are people who are going to be worse off for you not being here, you know, and that's not what you ultimately wanted in the first place. So, so I just feel for his family and friends and people who are so impassioned by some of these issues that they don't have a big picture view on.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to scroll through social media and the news and get caught up in every single problem in the world. You know, pre-internet, we didn't have to worry about those things. Pre-internet, you kind of lived in your own bubble to a certain extent. And there are plenty of problems right here stateside that he could be focusing his attention on
100%.
And speaking out on and trying to fix, you know?
Yeah. I just had a thought in my mind. So they call it a feed, right? And we say you are what you eat.
Correct.
It's like, bruh, I got some bars for y'all this morning. Like, check your feed, because that's your diet, bro.
Yep.
That's your diet. And it's actually affecting your spiritual nutrition, your spiritual health. And so RIP, the young man, his family is dealing with some stuff, and friends and people who knew him. Tragic. But for us, it is tragic. But for those of you who are just as impassioned on certain things, you gotta take a step back. You gotta get higher, and you also gotta talk to some people who have walked longer than you.
Yeah, and just speaking to our audience, the entrepreneur, you know, being an entrepreneur isn't just about making a bunch of money.
Right.
You know, it's the ability to make impact, and you have a lot of impact in your backyard with your employees and with your teammates and with your partners and within your local community, and you know, whatever platform that you build. And you know, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Absolutely.
So don't neglect that part of when you stake your flag and say, hey, I'm responsible for my own actions in the world, then you're going to, well, that also comes with the territory of like, you need to speak up candidly on these things and impact the people around you and take notice of what's going on in people's personal lives.
Yeah.
You can't just separate them entirely.
Yeah. No, you know, so just, and then thinking on that, it's funny how the topics, we can tie them together, because you think about it's like when I heard a motorcycle. You think about someone who's actively trying to change the world in the way that he sees fit using resources, Elon Musk.
Yep.
So you may not, some of his issues may not seem as significant as other, but nonetheless, he's chosen to make his life count by outpouring it through resources, relationships, opportunity, to address issues. And so everyone knows him at this point and his causes and the things, and people are buying into it. But his company, one of his companies, Tesla, landed in some hot water because Tesla, they ran up a bill with a local baker for whatever corporate event they were going to do. But they ordered roughly 4,000 pies from the local baker. And at the last minute, canceled this order, putting the business owner with like 16, basically some figures have said 6,000, but it's more likely 16,000, because it was 4,000 pies she had to make, made them double staffed.
Wow.
Put off other orders. And at the last second, Tesla cancels the order and didn't pay. And so, of course, the internet is undefeated, guys. This is why brand matters. It pops up on X, and Elon becomes aware of it and says, I'm going to help make this right. And so, breaking news, Tesla has settled the bill with a bakery that said it ran up $2,000.
It doesn't seem like a lot for 4,000 pies.
That's why I think the numbers are off in what they're reporting, because
Maybe
initially
400 pies. 4,000 pies would be a lot. I don't even know how you would make that many pies.
exactly, it would easily be over $2,000. So
Yeah.
I think the numbers are off. Initially, my first report was 16,000.
It's probably like it's
Right. Yeah. Without even really reading the article, for me personally, the reflection point on hearing this news was like, this is the significance of brand, good or bad.
right.
So it could have been bad, but because Elon is who he is and has the brand he has and the resources he has, he can actually step in and kind of, do some damage control in the situation
Right.
before it gets out of hand. And unfortunately, he invested in a platform that gives consumers and everyday people a direct line of communication to him for things like this to be brought to his table. And I just love that. But the lesson there being like, yo, your brand matters.
A lot.
But for me, I thought of like culture and leadership, because that should be something your company knows. Like, settle this bill. Like, bruh.
Why did they cancel it? Is there any news around that?
I didn't see why. But
A couple lessons though. Make sure you have a good contract, because if it takes you that long to make that many pies, and there's the risk that they could cancel even a week out
without
any recourse, that would suck. Also, customer concentration. Like, don't set aside everything for one customer unless that contract is tight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And a little silver lining, all the community was like, okay, well, since Tesla's not going to help you, we're going to help you.
I'll buy some pies.
And so literally they've had lines out the doors left and right.
Could have turned into a great marketing ploy for her.
It's like secretly just in the background. It's like, Elon, I'm going to do this and tell you. But I just love that. I love the fact that brand for them now, because they get a platform. Now people know that she's there in her business.
What's the name of her business?
Let's give her a shout out.
Because I love pie.
The Giving Pies in San Jose, California.
Let's go. Giving Pies. Stop by
The Giving Pie.
Giving Pie and buy some pie.
Wow, that's you got
Pie's making a comeback. It's right up there with a crumble cookie,
Yeah.
I could see the next trend being like mini pies to go, or a slice of pie to go.
Well,
Because you got nothing but cakes, right? You got crumble cookie. Where's the pie at? My grandpa would be turning in his grave. He's turning in his grave that nobody's eating pie right now.
Bro, I just had a peach pie over the weekend. First time ever. That joint was fire.
Speaking of that, peach cobbler in Georgia, you ever been there?
Yeah, dude, I'm black, man. I got peach cobbler, man.
But I mean, they made a store out of it.
Oh, no.
It's a concept
Okay.
called the Peach Cobbler. We love that place, man. You can go there, get pie, ice cream. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my grandfather and grandmother used to do peach cobbler with ice cream.
So good. We're digressing here.
Nonetheless, shout out to the Giving Pies. They weathered the storm. Community in San Jose helping. Elon also making sure that the company paid the bill. But make sure you pay your bills. Make sure your people understand how to treat. This is a key point. Make sure your vendors understand. Make sure your people know how to handle relationships with vendors.
Correct.
And the standards of how we operate and treat people, because this could have turned out worse in so many different ways. So
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
You could end up like Macy's. Speaking of Macy's,
they go.
150 Macy's stores to close. Gosh, man, never saw that one coming.
Over the next 3 years.
Over the next 3 years. But I mean, they made it longer than JCPenney's, Robinson's May, Sears. Who else was on that?
Well, I don't know. You got from that era. I think they might be the last.
When was the last time last time I went to a Macy's was to walk through it to get into the rest of the mall.
I would only go there for samples of cologne to check out what I wanted to buy.
I literally walked through it because the mall we were at was in like Birmingham, Alabama, and the Macy's was attached on the outside. And the only way to get into the entire mall was to walk through all the department stores.
Which is a sign of things to come, right? Like you got the same thing happening. Gap, Old Navy, Marshalls. Yeah, I mean,
What's going on with Marshalls? Marshalls
is just phased out a long time ago.
You're tripping, dude. I go to Marshalls all the time.
Right.
Marshalls is under the brand with
their discount brand, right?
At Home Goods.
Yeah.
You know.
That's right. TJ Maxx. They got
Sierra Trading
they
Post.
got brought into that.
TJ Maxx.
Yeah.
I mean, those brands.
They got life support, but I would say, but okay, fair enough. I stand corrected on that one. I give you that.
I'll be hating on Marshall. My wife will be hot if they get rid of Marshalls.
But the point though is like you could see this coming from a mile away. But Business Insider put out an article, and it says after years of sluggish sales performance, Macy's is planning a drastic cut to its store fleet in order to concentrate on better performing locations. Parentheses for now.
Right.
About 150 underperforming stores are on the chopping block for the next 3 years. It's 50 a year. Woo. The company announced Tuesday in its fourth quarter earnings release. The plan is to start with about 50 locations during this fiscal year, of course. Macy's has yet to specify exactly which locations will be impacted. The move follows cuts of 2,350 jobs and closures of 5 stores early this year. And the number is a stark increase from the single-digit closures Macy's has announced in recent years. Well, CEO had this to say, "We are making the necessary moves to reinvigorate relationships with our customers through improved shopping experiences, relevant assortments, and compelling value." That's from CEO Tony Spring. I won't read the rest of that, but...
Yeah, those stores are huge. 50,000 square feet, probably. Think about that.
Yeah, I mean...
And just irrelevant clothing and content, at the end of the day.
Well, and just, clothing and brand, like clothing and apparel, just apparel is just in a different, consumers don't have the same outlook on it the way we once did. It's not the same kind of thing. Unless you go boutique, like you can go boutique and just like create a dope experience that people come from all over for. But I
feel like just like content has gone niche, so is clothing. Like right now, shout out, I'm wearing Built apparel, Built shirt, Built over jacket. I'm not sponsored by them, but Built, if you're hearing this, we would love to be sponsored by you. But that's all I really wear because it's what fits me. And I'll occasionally go to Marshall's or something like that and find something on the discount rack. Yep. But at the end of the day, I buy this clothing because it fits my build. I know I'm going to like it. And the quality is really good too. Yeah. So the whole idea of going to the department store, just browsing around to try to find something, those days are gone.
You know what I would do? I would literally, if I was revamping Macy's, if I was like, absolutely, we're going to keep this thing going, I'm buying up small spaces. I'm either decreasing my catalog, maybe I'll leave my whole catalog online, but I'm going to take the dopest brands, designers, and people we can feature within our store, bring their clothing, their stuff into a small boutique experience, and then make the dopest online platform ever for shopping.
And maybe bring in a custom component, like what Bonobos did. Bonobos started online, and then they started opening little shops where you could go and get your measurements. They plug you into the computer, and then you can order online forever.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Right. Yeah. There's a way to do it, and you also different conversation. But nonetheless, if you're one of those people who are still within this organization, I'm not telling you what to do, but you just lost 2,350 jobs in the same company. So the clock is ticking.
Yeah,
it seems, and so you have a responsibility to do what you got to do. Maybe you should take this idea and pitch it to them, and that might bring a lifeline.
Or maybe you should go to clearlyacquired.com and go look to buy a business or something.
Boom. Definitely should do that. So nonetheless, Macy's, we appreciate you being one of the last of the Mohicans, and keep doing your thing while you can, but don't be that big dinosaur that's resistant to change, because it ain't going to work out well. Okay, so Dr.Phill. Dr.Phill. I didn't realize. So to be completely frank, I didn't realize Dr.Phill was willing to stand on business like this.
He's changed his tone in the past couple years.
Well, courtesy of Colin Rugg, I think Cole has the clip. It's about a minute clip of Dr.Phill torching the ladies on The View on their stance on COVID.
Finally.
And the same agencies that knew that are the agencies that shut down the schools for 2 years. Who does that? Who takes away the support system for these children? Who takes them away and shuts it down? And by the way, when they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being abused and sexually molested, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers with no way to watch, and referrals dropped 50 to 60%. So
there was also a pandemic going on, and they were trying to save
kids' lives. Remember, we know a lot of folks who died. during this. So it wasn't, people weren't laying around eating bond, but, well, you know what? We're lucky. Maybe we're lucky they didn't, because we kept them out of the places that they could be sick, because no one wanted to believe we had an issue.
Are you saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Look at the words. What did he say? They suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. What a bar.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of kids fell so far behind academically.
Yeah.
And then he touched on some other things just about kids who don't have the best home life as another concept. But I mean, are we still all thinking that like the COVID and the COVID vaccine and all that stuff was legit? I mean, the studies say otherwise. From Harvard, from MIT are all coming out and saying that is actually not true. That the medicine, the cure was actually worse than the actual exposure to the quote unquote terrible disease. Mind you, I never got
the yak. You never got the yak.
Never got pinned and have yet to get it. And I am regularly around spaces where I should get it or people who have it. So
yeah,
but what do I know? I just have a degree in physiology, studied immunology. I'm not a doctor, so apparently I can't have opinion on this. But hey, if you're on The View, you can.
Look, I'm not a doctor either, and
I just stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
But the take on far less about the COVID. Why I think it's such a viral clip. Having 11 million views. I think it has very little to do with the subject matter, because COVID really isn't even our sort of topic spectrum right now.
It's somebody punching the View in the mouth.
Someone swinging back.
Yeah. Saying, what are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
What do you say to me? You guys think that you can just say whatever you want? Nobody's going to challenge you ever?
Yeah.
So he did it in a public format on their platform.
Yeah. And truthfully, like, there wasn't anything that they could say. If you watch the rest of it, there was nothing that they could say at the break to the commercial, there's nothing else to say. But that's what we have to see. That's why the importance of standing on it, whether you're a Dr.Phill, a doctor, or a doctor of business, AKA an entrepreneur, CEO.
Right.
Stand on it. And he wasn't being rude. He just was unwavering on, like, this is the facts. This is not an opinion.
Correct.
And, you'll win people over like that. And so it might take some time. It might take you to where you're past 40.
Yeah. It's true though. I mean, you care a lot more what people think in your 20s. Mm-hmm. It starts to diminish a little bit in your 30s. And then as you get to your 40s, you're just like,
yeah, some
will, some won't. So what?
Mm-hmm. With that, and on that, something we talk about, and this will be our last topic with you guys. Something we talk about a lot is just like time freedom and longevity and the ability to delay things for an extended period of time as you are in business. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, I'm going to compile a list of notable entrepreneurs who became billionaire, started $1 billion companies after their 40s. We've talked about them. We've made content about these people. But I was like, I'm going to just pull a list and share with our listeners today. And so I found a list of several people. One you've already mentioned, obviously Vera Wang, and she was 40. But I was looking for the ones who I didn't know. Herbert Boyer, Genentech. I didn't know who he was, but he started his company at 40, became $1 billion research company in the field of genetic engineering. Linda Wyman, we know. Henry Ford, Jeffrey Brotman. I didn't know. This is the guy who started Costco.
Oh, wow.
At 40 years old. So Costco was killing it.
Yeah.
I started at 40. The Intel founder was 41, Robert Noyce. The Gap's founder was 44, Donald Fisher, when he started The Gap. Lululemon, Chip Wilson, 42. Martha Stewart popped off when she was 41. Shout out to Martha, still around and kicking. Thomas Siebel of Siebel's
She even
sister.
did a year in jail on there too.
She came thugged out, baby. She got years back on her life, and her career was extended, baby.
Yeah.
Who said crime don't pay?
Her and Snoop Dogg made a cookbook together.
Sure did. She been in movies, all kind of stuff. You know,
she got some street cred after that stint in jail. Insider trading.
John Warnock, who started Adobe at 42 years old.
Wow.
Look at where Adobe is. Ralph Roberts started Comcast at 43. Sam Walton started Walmart at 44. Jack Weil, of Rockmount Ranchwear, started at 45. Dave Duffield started PeopleSoft at 46. Company grew to $10 billion.
Wow.
Momo Fuku Ando, Nissan Foods, Japanese company, started when he was 48.
Nissan Foods, those are like the little cup, the little noodle cups, right?
Not sure.
Yeah, those are the noodle cups.
Yeah, top ramen instant noodles. Yep. I just eat the things. I don't look at the labels. Yoshisuke Ayokwa.
Man, you nailed that.
He started Nissan at 48. Nissan, the automobile. Wow. Love that. And then Tony Ryan of Ryanair started at 48. And Julia Childs, 49 years old, French chef. I wouldn't say she was a billionaire entrepreneur, but her brand. And then this one I found was really cool. Leo Goodwin founded Geico at age 50.
Wow.
Which is really cool. $25 billion just as of 2018. And that's after being acquired from Berkshire Hathaway and different things.
Yeah.
So,
the vast majority of companies started in this country are people between the ages of 30 and 40. That's like the first little nugget. But for some reason, we think we should be further along when we're in our 20s. And I think it has more to do with content.
The feed, boy.
The feed, yeah. You have that feeling that you're not doing enough or good enough, and who even knows how real that is. And some people might find a ton of success in their early 20s, but it's very rare in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Speaking of feeds, as it relates to this, I was talking to our friend Joey Scattell. Shout out to Joey Scattell. Came by headquarters here. Doing some cool things in his business. And he was like, dude, you know what? One of the things I realized I had to do recently was reset my feed. So he was like, I went through my social platforms and I had to reset. And why I bring that in is because why are young people so vexed by time? Well, all they consume is constant. First of all, there's no time in breaks. Yes. So you're going to feel like you have no time. And then second, all of the wisdom you're getting is probably not as much wisdom as you think, because the people who you need to be getting wisdom from aren't really making the content that's feeding you your steady diet of content. So
yeah, and there's that weird phenomenon where if you talk about something or you watch other people do it, you get the same dopamine hit as if you're doing it yourself. And so it puts you in this weird state of, you know, not feeling like you're doing enough, then like having some satisfaction from watching other people do it and then talking about it and then not actually taking action. And so there's times where, you know, I'm not in my feed as much because I'm so busy. Right? It's because we're actually doing the work and creating content. Right? I haven't been on my feed for the last hour because we're doing this podcast, right? So go do the work. Go do the things that you want to do and invest in taking the steps to become a better entrepreneur. If you're in your 20s and you're just getting started, like just do it. Your first business is not going to be your last business. That's for sure. All those people that we just named, I guarantee you that they had other things that they had tried or dabbled in prior to that and then kind of stumbled into, okay, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And also many of them too held professional roles before transitioning into their own operations.
Yeah, they're getting real world experience, business experience.
And so today you're like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm feeling that. Actually, go be an entrepreneur, develop some skills, get a network, get some resources, and then give your project later on some legs.
Correct. Or work on it on the side, you know, like it doesn't have to happen overnight is the first thing. We grossly overestimate what we can do in a year. So
Roger that.
Play the long game. Well, should we end on that?
We'll end on that.
It was a great episode. We appreciate you guys. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and give us a sub, give us a thumbs up,
leave a comment,
maybe even give us a review on Spotify or Apple. We love that. It helps us know what we're doing well and where we need to get better. And if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, head over to pain2profits.co where you can catch some free weekly content that'll help you level up.
Till next time, guys.
Peace out.
Later.